Namaste, and welcome to this talk that I've called something like counting from 1 to 10 mystically or Kabbalistically. It's about the numbers 1 to 10. I'm presenting this talk as a bit of an intermezzo in between my other talks about the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, the tree of Sefirot, about which I've done two talks so far. I want to do this because I feel that the further we'll be getting into the other Sefirot, so far I've only addressed the first two divine emanations, Keter, the crown, and Chokhmah, wisdom. I feel like the further we get in this unfolding of the godly powers, the more detailed things will become. Because, of course, in a structure like this, you start with something very abstract and it becomes more and more detailed the further things develop. And hence, the more and more things will be included and it might become all a bit chaotic. So, for that reason, I thought to do a talk about how the numbers 2 up to 10 really are implied in the number 1, Kabbalistically, mystically, so that there is a bit of a natural flow in all this. As part and parcel of that, I would want to address a little bit two divine names because they are part and parcel of that natural unfolding of the 1 up to the 10 or down to the 10. Now, these two names are, on the one hand, the Tetragrammaton, which is the four-lettered name. It's called the four-lettered name. It's called the most holy name. It's the name here. Yud, He, Vav, He. Four letters, the Tetragrammaton. Now, the Tetragrammaton has a place in the tree itself, but it's also seen as the base, the foundation of all the 10 Sefirot, the 10 powers that make up for the tree of life. As such, the Tetragrammaton, the unfolding of the Tetragrammaton, is basically the prototype of the unfolding of the numbers themselves. That's why the Tetragrammaton is important. The other name is the name belonging to the first sefirah. It's this name here, Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh, and it's the name of the first sefirah, Keter, the first of the 10 sefirot, and it's really the name that God calls himself when Moses asks for his name. So these are the 10 sefirot. This is Keter, Malchut, our world, and the 10 in total are called the Tree of Life or the Tree of Sefirot. So the name belonging to the highest, Keter, crown. The name of the Sefirah itself is crown. The divine name belonging to that is Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh, meaning I am that I am. A bit of a Eastern concept of that which is, thou art that. All those trains of thought are reflected in this divine name. I am that I am. So let us start with the one. The one as a number mystically, of course, always pertains to God, the undivided force, the force that is self-sufficient, independent, united. It's the non-duality in the context of Advaita, of the philosophy of Advaita, non-duality. That's the non-dual force, and as such, it's the one. Now, in the medieval times, in the Middle Ages, it's also called the unmoved mover, as the power that moves everything, that gives everything life, from which everything goes forth, without itself being affected by all those processes, the unmoved mover. Now, Kabbalistically, this one is shown to have the two embedded in itself, the potentiality really of duality in a few different ways. So, in different traditions, this is shown to be as such in via different ways, different pathways of philosophy and metaphysics. In Kabbalah, linguistic mysticism, of course, it's very, very closely related to words and letters. Now, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph, from which the Aleph and the Beit are the first two letters of the Hebrew alphabet. This is the letter Aleph here, from which we get our name alphabet, Aleph, Beit, of course, as well. So this Aleph is printed like that. It's written like that. Mystically, it's often explained to be composed of two elements, because this little part at the top and that little part at the bottom, really looking like two commas, one comma and one inverted comma, are seen as being the same. As such, that letter has two elements, a comma at the top, comma at the bottom, with a stripe which is seen as kind of a mirror. So really, that 1, the Aleph, has as the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, has the numerical value 1, and entails, has inside it, contains the potential of duality. Now, the same potential of duality already addressed in my second talk on the Tree of Life, where I talked about the first sefirah, Keter, the one that I just showed you at the top, Keter, the crown. There I talked about the numerical value of Keter, which is 620. The 3 letters amount to 620, and how that really expresses the 2 times 310. 2 times 310, of course, is 620. I explained in that talk that that has to do with the reflection, the original reflection of the Godhead, and how it really also shows that there are 2 elements in that one. Keter is 1, but it has 2 elements. 2 times existence, 310, 2 times thought as well, divine thought. Also having the numerical value 310. So Keter has that duality in it as well, just like the Aleph has that potential to duality, the potentiality of duality. Now, the divine name connected to this, first sefirah Keter, also has that duality. Like I showed, it is a name that is written Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh, I am that I am. And already in the English, you can also hear the I am that I am. It has 2 parts I am, 2 times Ehuyeh in Hebrew. So again, a reflection of 2 elements that they look like the same, like the 2 commas in the letter Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. They look like the same. The one is inverted. This same thought is going on in the name Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh. So it is I am, but there is a bit of potentiality of duality embedded in that. Now this potentiality we immediately find back in the name of the second sefirah. So the second sefirah, Chochmah, wisdom. The Hebrew word Chochmah, the first 2 letters, Choch, inverted, a reference to that reflection, the inverted reflection of the Godhead, the onset of duality as a potential, is Koach. Now Koach means potential. So the word wisdom, of course, because of everything that's going on, has that imprint, and Koach is there. So the potential of something is there. So there we also have that duality now as a unity and the potential. Of course, implied, that's what this talk is about, how the numbers, the subsequent numbers are implied in the earlier numbers. Implied is the activation. If you have potentiality, you have activation. Now in Kabbalah, that activation is the 3rd, the number 3, expressing itself as the 3rd sefirah, Bina. Now Bina, understanding, is also called the mother. So on the one hand, now we have Chochmah, which starts with 2 letters, potential of. The second 2 letters, the last 2 letters of the 4-lettered word Chochmah, amount to the number 45. Now the number 45 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word Adam in the Torah, in the beginning, meaning like original human. It's not man or woman yet. It's original human, it's androgynous, it's the concept of human with the capital H. So the word Chochmah also spells the potential koach of human, the number 45. Opposite to that now, or as the spouse, is Bina, the mother. The mother then is the activation of human. So you have the potentiality of human, activation of human. As such, we have 3 elements: the unmoved mover, and then the potentiality and the actuality. 3 elements. Now, these 3 elements, of course, also introduce the idea of the Trinity. The Trinity, in many religions, many spiritual traditions, the Trinity is very important. Of course, we find it in Christianity as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. In Hinduism, the 3 main deities, the 3 main gods are the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer, of the deity of death, as in Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Trinity is very strong there as well. Of course, the well-known word Om, as a reflection, energetic reflection of the processes of creation and the return to the void, also has 3 elements. Now in Kabbalah, these 3 elements again go forth from the first. So we have the letter Aleph, as I showed you, had the comma at the top, comma at the bottom, stripe in the middle. 3 elements, because that stripe in the middle, as we'll hear later, also is a letter. So 3 elements embedded in the one. as the divine name Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh, I am that I am, 3 elements. And interestingly, those 3 words, Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh, have all the same first letter, Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. 3 times the Aleph, so the Trinity, embedded in the one, Aleph is the first letter, is the one. Those 3 parts of that name, I am that I am, interestingly enough, also all 3 have the same numerical value as words, 3 times 21. As such, we see that we have a unity that is a trinity. And that's also expressed through now the potentiality and the activation. The potentiality in the Hindu context would be Shiva, as in divine consciousness, the male side of the tree, in the case of the tree of Sefirot. So we have sides or columns, as we call them. We have a right side, a left side, other way around. Sorry, that's the right side, that's the left side, and then a middle column. 3 columns. The right side headed by Chokhmah, the male side, so the Shaivite side. The other side headed by the mother, of course, the mother as the beginning of actualization. Feminine side. In Hinduism, that would then be Shakti. So whereas in Hinduism we have Brahman, not with an N at the end, Brahman as the total, as the unity, as the unknown, as the completion, as everything, as the source of everything. In Kabbalah that would be Keter, and then we have the femininity and the masculinity as the 2 sides of the tree of life. In Hinduism, of course, Shiva and Shakti. In Kabbalah, then the father and the mother, with the mother at the head. Now there's one more implication of the tree here, which is the 3 letters of the name of names. So I began this talk by referring to 2 holy names, the 2 most holy names, being the Tetragrammaton and Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh. Now the Tetragrammaton is the most holy name because it's seen as the foundation of all of creation. And as you can see, it has 4 letters, 1, 2, 3, 4 letters, but 2 are the same. So there again, we have an echo of that idea of the original reflection of the Godhead, the doubling, as I addressed in the second talk, about the tree of life. In this case, the point I'm making is that there are 3 letters. The tree is embedded there as well. Now the 4. How is the 4 embedded? How does it flow forth naturally? Of course, you saw already the Tetragrammaton, 3 letters, 1 is doubled. So in the Tetragrammaton, in the case of the Tetragrammaton, very clearly the 4 is embedded in the 3 because it's the 4-lettered name in which 1 letter doubles. 3 letters, 1 doubled, 4 in total. As such, the 4 is embedded in the 3. Now, whereas the first 3 are very abstract concepts, the further we go in the numbers, the more detailed things will become, Kabbalistically as an unfolding of the Godhead, also meaning the more materialistic they become. So the more matter, which means the more images will become part of the explanation as well. You'll see how that from the number 6 becomes much more detailed. There are many more images and it's much less about the numbers themselves because it's becoming less abstract. Now this starts really with the 4. The number 4, as I said, the 4-lettered name, as the 4th sefirah, it's the 4th emanated power, divine emanation. It's chesed in Hebrew. The power meaning mercy and love. Now there's an interesting overlap again here with Hinduism. In Hinduism, whereas the 3 still has the Shaivite connotations, the Trishul as well, the weapon of Shiva, the 4 becomes more Vaishnavite, so Vishnu, the deity, the preserver, because now we're manifesting. After the mother, manifestation really begins in this concept of the numbers becoming material things. And the 4 is the first material manifestation really. Now, like I said, in Hinduism, that's the concept of Vishnu. Now, whereas the Tetragrammaton, as the 4-lettered name, is the base for the 10 Sefirot, Vishnu, as the 4th power, has 10 emanations. So we see those concepts coming back there. There's another overlap here. In Vaishnava tradition, the concept of bhakti yoga, the yoga of love, of surrender, of love mostly, is very strong. Of course, we see that in the books related to this specific Vaishnava tradition. we have the Bhagavad Gita, we have the Ramayana, especially in the Ramayana, the love of Lakshmana for Ram, the love of Hanuman for Ram, of course, there's lots of love going on there. So that's the bhakti, the concept of bhakti. Now the fourth sefirah in Kabbalah is called love. So you also have that overlap. Now there's another strong overlap that has more to do with the onset of creation itself, really, and that's Brahma in the Hindu setting. Now Brahma in the Hindu setting and related to the number 4 is exemplified by the fact that Brahma has 4 heads. Now in our case, the Kabbalistic setting, there is an overlap with the patriarch that is affiliated with the 4th Sefirah. So apart from having divine names, the 10 divine powers, which are really 10 numerical living beings, also have biblical figures affiliated with them. That starts mostly with the 4th Sefirah. In this case, the 4th Sefirah has the patriarch Abraham. So the first Jew in the case of in the Kabbalistic setting, the first one who lived according to all the laws of Moses. Now, Abraham, if you look at the word in English already, or the name in English, Brahma, Abraham, there's an overlap there. All the letters of Brahma you can find in Abraham. And I've done an entire talk just about the link between those two concepts, because really, Kabbalistically, Abraham is not just a name, it's a concept. Now, Kabbalistically, the creational part of Brahma can be found in the fact that the letters that spell the name Abraham can also spell the phrase with the hey, they were created. A phrase that is a biblical phrase, and here it's about the heavens and the earth were created. So Brahma, creation, Abraham, creation, with the letter hey, which is a traditional Jewish thing. This world, our present world, is said to be created by means of the letter hey, which is the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet and is part of the Tetragrammaton. So this letter here, that doubles in the Tetragrammaton, is the letter hey, the numerical value 5. So in that sense, the 4 Hindu 4 Brahma, 4 heads, creational powers of Brahma, and then the Vaishnavite Bhakti movement, all of that you can find back in Chesed, in the 4th Sefirah, in the sense of the tree of life. Now it must be clear already now how the 5 is included here. The 5, of course, is the letter that doubles. So the 4th letter of the Tetragrammaton is the hey that I just showed you. So there are 4 letters, 3 letters implying the 4, because 3 letters, 1 is doubling the 4, and then the letter that doubles itself is the 5. Now this 5, as such, is implied by the Tetragrammaton, because it's one of the 4 letters of the Tetragram. It's also the letter, as we just learned, by means of which the heavens and the earth were created. So the creational powers are important there as well. Another way in which this 5 was already contained in what we said before, it's in Abraham, it's Behei Baram, by means of the letter Hey, they were created. So also there, it's implied. The letter Hey is the means by which our present world is created. In the Kabbalistic sense, it's also already implied by the 3rd Sefirah, Bina, because the 3rd Sefirah, Bina, has strong connotations of the 5. It is the first Hey, so of the Tetragrammaton Yud Hey, Vav Hey. That Hey there is placed in Bina. The first Hey is placed in Bina. So there the Hey is kind of implied through the Tetragrammaton. It's also implied through the Trinity that the tree also is, as we discussed already. I mentioned a few Trinities. One Trinity I didn't mention is the 72 lettered name, which is a Kabbalistic name, of course. The 72 lettered name features in Exodus, so the biblical book of Exodus, and it's really reflected by 3 verses. So as such, it's not so much the 72 lettered name, it's really the 216 lettered name. 3 times 72, 216. Now 216 is the numerical value of the 5th Sefirah, Gebura. So as such, the 5 as the 5th Sefirah, Gebura, which of course again is an expression of the number 5, is implied by the 3, and through the 3 times the 72 lettered name, Gebura, 216. Now, it must be clear by now how the Vav, so how the number 6 is already embedded in these previous numbers. I showed you the Tetragrammaton a few times now. As such here, it's this little stripe, that's the 6, which is the letter Vav with the number 6. As I said, things will become more and more detailed. As such, there will be more imagery. Now this really starts gaining momentum with the 6. The Vav, as that stripe in the middle, is implied because it's part of the 4-lettered name. In Hebrew, it also means end. So the letter Vav has the meaning end. As such, it also combines things. In our name of names, the Tetragrammaton, it combines that first Hey with the second Hey, which means that's really the expression of the unfolding, excuse me. The mother expresses herself as the daughter being our world. Those are the two Heys of the Tetragrammaton. The first Hey in the mother, the second Hey is the daughter, which is the 10th sefirah. So as such, that Vav combines as an end, 5 and 5 makes for the 10. That's the first letter, the Tetragrammaton. So in the Tetragrammaton, the 5, the 6, and the 5 are kind of implied through the 10, because the two 5s make for the 10. Now, in the sense of the tree of Sefirot, that 6 binds those 6 Sefirot in between the mother and the daughter. So starting with Chesed up to Yesod, the 9th sefirah, including Yesod as well. That's what the Vav does. So as such, we have Keter, and then we have Chochmah, Bina, the mother, and then we have the 6 Sefirot up to Yesod. Those 6 are all represented by the Vav. But specifically, because it's the 6, the number 6, it's also about this sefirah, that power in the middle, which is Tiferet, and that's really, according to the placement of the divine names, where the Tetragrammaton is placed. So the number 6 is implied through one of the letters, as one of the letters of the Tetragrammaton, but also because it is the Tetragrammaton as a whole, as a divine name, not as the power of all the names and all the numbers and everything in existence. It's placed on the 6th sefirah, the 6th power. So in that sense, the 6 is implied as well. Now, as you can see, Tiferet, as I showed you, it's in the middle of the tree. It's the middle pillar. We have 3 pillars. The right pillar is the male pillar, Shiva, Shaivite powers, divine consciousness. Left pillar, feminine pillar, Shakti, headed by the mother. Middle pillar, androgynous. It's the equanimity. The powers are balanced out. The right and the left powers are balanced out through the powers on the middle. And this, even though it's middle, is basically male until the last sefirah Malchut, which is feminine, which is our world, completely feminine. Like in Hinduism, all of feminology is Shakti, is feminine. So this Vav is a power that unites. It's a power that balances out and has the cognomen of the pillar. And as such, of course, then we start thinking about the Shaivite pillar, which is the lingam. So here, with the 6, Shaivite things start becoming emphasized. The pillar becomes stronger, the weapon becomes stronger, and hence we get phallic connotations. And lurking is another power that I will address just now. Now, this sense of the Vav as the unifier in old Kabbalistic texts, also called the Prince of Peace, also can be seen in, of course, the Aleph already. The Aleph, the letter Aleph, with the 2 commas facing each other, comma at the top, comma at the bottom, with the stripe in between. This stripe here in between is again seen as the Vav. So here also it's a mirror function, something that balances out 2 essentially equal elements that we perceive as duality. Now, here in the name Ehuyeh, Asher Ehuyeh, I am that I am, the middle word, Asher, that I, is also perceived to be that Vav. So again, function of a unifier, of something that balances out, of something that connects, and vice versa can reflect and can cause doubling as well. So much about the Vav. Now, how is the 7 implied in the 6? Morphologically, so according to its shape, in Hebrew they're quite similar. So if you have the Vav here, the Zayin would be written with the top bit a tiny bit more pronounced. So morphologically, shape-wise, make-up-wise, very close, but not really implied in that sense. As a number, really, as an extra number, additional number, it's implied by the fact that the Vav, so the letter I just showed you, the stripe, the vertical stripe, is called in old Kabbalistic texts the father when he is active among the children being the Sefirot. Now the father, of course, is Keter, which again has the first letter Aleph affiliated with it. Aleph is the 1, as the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It has the numerical value 1. The Vav is the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, as such has the numerical value 6. 1 plus 6 makes 7. So there we really have the 7 being implied by the original male, androgynous male force becoming active inside the tree of life. Now that's one strong implication of the 7, as it is already implied. That's what I mean to say. It's already implied in the first 6, and in this case strongly in the 1. Other ways it's implied, it's through the meaning. So we saw that the Vav had the meaning, the connotation of a sword as a pillar and of a sword. Now the 7 as the 7th letter of the Hebrew alphabet with the name Zain. Zain means weapon. So as before in the Vav there is the connotation, the thought of a weapon, of a sword, the sign actually has that meaning. So strongly already embedded in kind of the connotation of the Vav. Now those are the male parts, the weapon, the phallic connotations, and another power lurking, as I said, and then the expression of Keter, the male, in a male way, on the middle column, the male column of the tree of Sefirot, really, even though it's androgynous. But I'll explain that later. Now there's one other thing that's implied, and that's also quite, it's according to these same developments, the male and the female. So I've addressed the male now. The female is embedded, was already showing the sign. So the sign, the 7 as the letter sign, was already embedded in the female side of things through the mother, because the mother is said to have 7 children, and those are the 7 children that come forth from her, obviously the 7 Sefirot, after Bina. Bina the 3rd plus 7 makes for the tree of life the totality of the 10. So really the 10 is already implied here as well. But 7 children, so the 7 is implied in the 3rd. Now it's furthermore so, because the Zain, when you write it out, so the Zain is the 7th letter, and hence an expression of the number 7. But if you write out the word Zain in Hebrew, and that's written with the Zain, the Yud, and the Nun, 3 letters, together these 3 letters have the numerical value 67. Now that is also the numerical value of Bina. So as such, to the numerical value of the mother, that numerical energy, the 7, even though it is a male force on the right side of the tree, has the connotations of the sword, phallic connotations, it's embedded in the mother. So here, the male and the female start to really interweave and become one, which of course is the condition for life as we know it, which is the intermingling of Shiva and Shakti to the highest degree. Now, the 8. The 8, as I said, it becomes more details, more imagery, it becomes all, it comes to life, if you will, as well. The 8 is embedded in many different ways. First of all, we have the mother and we have the 7 children, which is 8. 1 plus 7 is 8. As a concept, if there are children and there's a mother, then we have a father as well. Now the father in that sense, Kabbalistically, especially starting with the Zohar onward, the Book of Splendor, the mother is Bina, the father is Chochma. Chochma, 2nd sefirah, wisdom. Chochma starting with a Chet. So Kabbalistically, specific Sefirot are really said to be the expression of their first letter. In other Sefirot, we look more at the entire name, etc. But in this case, the heading letter Chet, with the numerical value 8, because it's the 8th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, points at the 8 being included in the mother. So the father as Chochma, the first letter Chet, numerical value 8, hence the number 8 was already present there. Also, when we're talking about the topic of the sword, starting with the Vav, the 6th, then the Zain, which means weapon, and has the connotation and meaning of a sword, the Chet now is also the first letter of Cherev, which means sword. In that sense, it is the flaming sword that the Garden of Eden was protected by after Adam and Eve left. It's a biblical story. It's protected by a flaming sword. Sword is Cherev, also first letter Chet. So again, that power of the 8 expressed now as a sword through the initial powers and imagery that's unfolding, that's being manifested. Now that 8 and the father are implied in many different ways. But let me point out one thing that introduces more the new concept that's been lurking behind the scenes all the time, but only now the imagery makes a bit more sense. So one step back to the seven. The seven as a sword contains also the snake. Now that's a massive concept, and it's been there all along in all the other numbers, but now it's really showing itself. This is so because in the story about Egypt, there is a whole thing about Moses doing miracles, of course, through God doing miracles through Moses. And at one point, Moses' staff, again, a vertical a vav, implicated also in design, the same shape as the vav, the weapon, the staff of Moses, that same six, that same seven, is turned into a snake. So there we have the link between the staff and the snake. Of course, you can now also think the staff, the pillar, and the snake becomes Shaivite, lingam, and the cobra, Shiva's cobra. Now this snake now in the eighth sefirah, in the number 8, really starts gaining momentum as follows. The 3 feminine sefirot on the left side. So now the 8, we're out the 8, we're on the left side of the tree of life, which means the feminine side. Now as the 8th sefirah, it is the 3rd feminine power. We have 3 male powers, we have 3 female powers, 3 male powers, 3 female powers, 4 on the middle androgynous powers that in the end will have a gender as well, but originally androgynous. Now as the 3rd feminine power, it takes the 8th place, as I said. The first feminine power is Bina, the mother, on the 3rd place. The second, we talked about Gebura, which was 3 times 72, 3 times the 72 lettered name, amounting to 216, linked to 5 because it's the 5th sefirah, an expression of the number 5. So the first feminine expressed by the 3, the second feminine expressed by the 5, the third feminine, 3 plus 5, expressed as the 8. 3, 5, 8. Now 358 as a number, 358, is exactly the numerical value of the snake Nachash, and specifically the snake in the setting of the Garden of Eden. So the snake features before that in the Torah already, and it features after that because the snake is massively important in the Kabbalistic thought. But where it's mentioned in the Garden of Eden, it's called Nachash, 358. So as such, the snake is implied as well. Now, of course, it's clear what the 9 is going to do. Implied in many different ways. Now everything is flowing, everything's becoming more detailed, phenomenology is manifesting, all lurking on that power of the 8. The gateway to the 10th, which in the Kabbalistic scheme of the Tree of Light, is underneath it. Even though Malchut, the last sefirah, Malchut, is on the middle line, it's thoroughly feminine, whereas Yesod, on the middle lines, androgynous power, equanimous power, still thoroughly male. But as we see, already has lots of femininity in it. Now the 9 is the snake, but it's also the feminine snake, because the snake came through the feminine side. Bina, and then Gebura, and then the 8th sefirah Hod, meaning glory. Feminine side together, indicating the snake. Feminine snake, in Hinduism, known, of course, as the daughter as well of Shiva, Manasa, which she is the snake deity, mostly prevalent. The temples are mostly in Assam, northeastern part of India. But the feminine snake. In the Semitic context, all the cultures that preceded Judaism really had this concept, the feminine snake as a creative power. So we know that we see that in Sumerian culture already, like 5,000 BC even. Then cultures after the Assyrians, the Babylonians culture, they all have that idea, that concept of the positive power as the snake. So the negative power, if we find it in translations in the Bible, it's a bit of a novel thing. It's not really, for Kabbalists, it's not interesting really. Because we're not talking about morality, we're talking about the unfolding of the Godhead and the powers, and we're watching them grow. Conversely, like maybe the snake rising its head and really showing itself also as the awakening of the prana, as the growing stronger of the chi. It doesn't really matter how you phrase that, the snake is there. Now in Kabbalah, the snake is already present in all these things just because it's, of course, an unfolding. But Numerically, the number 9, is related to the 9th letter, of course, of the Hebrew alphabet, which is the letter Tet. Now, the Tet, as a word, means snake. So it can't become more overt now that the 9 is the snake. It implies, and it's shown in mystical commentaries on the Hebrew alphabet, also to be the womb. So here we have the two powers really of Shiva as well. We have death and we have life, which is really strongly that 9th power, as a sefirah called Yesod, the foundation. So the foundation of life. Now the 9, Kabbalistically, has two tendencies really. It's in the middle. It has two tendencies. It has the tendency to life. It can be seen as a gateway to life. And then the 10 follows, of course, as the manifestation of the Tetragrammaton. The last letter, Hey, is our world. That goes through the portal of Yesod. Yesod also has a portal to death. So things can return to the mother. Usually in Kabbalah, it's not said that it goes back to Keter, to the first. It goes back to the mother, because with the mother, phenomenology really starts. But the verb used in that context is lehashiv. It is being returned. Lehashiv has all the letters of Shiva, interestingly enough. I find that interesting as a Shaivite. That's interesting for me, that those sounds, those linguistic elements are there also in Hinduism. So now we have Yesod, portal to life, or a portal to death. Now, as a portal to life, of course, the 1 starts again. Life starts with the 1, and then everything starts unfolding. Kabbalistically and Hinduistically, mystically, life is an ongoing process. It didn't happen once, creation. It happens all the time. So if Yesod, the number 9, also as, of course, the total of the mother, the father, and the 7 children, if that force is a force for life, we get the 10, really represented by the 1. If it's a force as a portal to death, and here, of course, we have the dual implications of mystical death as well, which is a portal to life through death. But if Yesod functions as the return, then what we're left with is not a 0. So as such, then Malchut is implied, but two different things are implied. So Malchut, the last sefirah, the 10 is implied in the 9. Another thing that's implied in the 9 is basically the foundation of life. So now we have the 1 and we have the 0 as two possibilities. Again, the duality, really, the potentiality and the actuality. As an actuality, it will be the 1. As a potentiality, something that returns to the original force, it's a 0. As such, we have the 1 and the 0, which in our IT world is interesting from a programming point of view. 1 0 1 0 1 0. That pattern is contained in Yesod. As such, as a 1 and a 0 combined, we have the 10. And hence the 10 is implied in the 9. Also, as a yes and a no, a 1 and a 0, it refers to the atoms, as we know, that flash in and out of existence. So life, death, life, death. Very much Shiva, the deity of death, but also the deity of creation. That's the number 9. Now, as I said, the number 10 is implied in that, through the 1 and the 0, but also, of course, as the unfolding of the Tetragrammaton. We saw the Tetragrammaton has 2 letters Hey, each with a numerical value 5. 5 plus 5 makes 10. As such, it's implied there. It's also implied already in the letter Aleph that we started to talk with, because, like I said, those commas at the top of the Aleph are seen as the Yud, which is the 10. The Yud has the numerical value 10. So it's the first letter of the Tetragrammaton, and as such, it's also implied in everything we just said, because it's the first letter from which everything unfolds. It's also there, already present in the Aleph. Now, as a last comment, these two, the Tetragrammaton, the base for everything in creation, and then the Aleph, the first letter, as the symbol of the 1, are also linked. Because, as I said, the 2 commas, the comma at the top and the inverted comma at the bottom, are each representing a Yud. The Yud has the numerical value 10. Now that line in the middle is represented by the Vav. It's the letter Vav, the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. As such, the Aleph, even though it's 1 and has the numerical value 1, it contains the 26, which is the 10 plus the 10 plus the Vav in the middle, together 26. Now the 26 is the total numerical value of the Tetragrammaton. 10, 5, 6, 5, 10, 5, 6, 5. Add them all together, 26. So as such, the 1, even though it is a 1, contains duality, but it also contains the Tetragrammaton. and as such it contains all of the 10 because the Tetragrammaton starts with the 10 and ends with the 10th sefirah. So all of that is really implied. Now, of course, in this way you can see that now the 20 is lurking, and in Hebrew the letters go from 1 to 10, the Aleph to the Yud. After that, we don't go to 11, we go to 20. The Chaf, and then the 30, and then the 40, up to the 100. So already the numbers want to express this as well. But yeah, in this talk, that will be a bit too much. So I'm not going to do that. But just to show that everything is contained in the Aleph. And as such, the 10 Sefirot are really contained in the first Sefirah. So it's not so much that there are new forces and new things we're learning about the unfolding. It's really we're looking at the same thing all the time, but a more and more detailed expression. Thank you for watching, and I hope this was interesting.